Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if Napoleon won. By won I mean that Napoleon would beat Russia and thus not be beaten consecutively and end up being beaten in Waterloo at the end. The point of divergence will thus be in the invasion of Russia. But more about that later. Napoleon's true name was Napoleone di Buonaparte. He was born in Corsica. Napoleon's family were descendants from the minor Italian nobility. Corsica was not French for the longest time and only started to speak French much later when, for instance, he went to school in mainland France. He was serving as an artillery officer and he also was considered a military genius from a very young age. He rose quickly the ranks of the military and became a general at the age of only 24. He was given the command of the Armée de l'Italie after being able to suppress a royalist revolt, because remember, we are in the timeline of the French Revolution. When he was 26 years old, he began a campaign against the Austrians and its Italian satellite states. Napoleon's army was able to win every battle and he conquered most of Italy. Napoleon then went in 1798 to Egypt and around 1799 he made a coup and became the first consul of the Republic. He sold the Louisiana territory to the US and he wanted to re-establish slavery in Saint-Domingue, or also known as Haiti. In 1804 he declared himself as Emperor of the French and he went on winning more battles against the Russians, the Austrians, the German principalities and dissolved the HRE. Napoleon's Asian policies focused on making treaties with Persia and the Indian states. He went on to occupy Spain, putting his brother on the Spanish throne. By that time, it became clear that the UK and France had many differences, and Napoleon hoped to counter the British naval blockade with a continental system, which in the reverse would then blockade the British as well. In 1812, Napoleon tried to invade Russia, and the Russian troops they retreated and implemented the scorched earth tactics. The French couldn't get supplies, and after staying in Moscow and not getting any type of peace offer, the morale and discipline broke down. The French retreated, and the Russian winter gave the French all the rest. In the War of the Sixth Coalition, France lost. Napoleon was banned to Elba, only to come back and to be beaten in the Battle of Waterloo in June 1815. But what if all of that changed? What if Napoleon won? Let's come back to the invasion of Russia. Instead of continuing after Smolensk, Napoleon would find something really odd and the French wouldn't continue the invasion. Instead, a compromise with the Duchy of Warsaw and Austria would be made. The Duchy of Warsaw and Austria would have to control these areas, and Napoleon would also allow them to keep some of his soldiers in there just in case if Russia would then re-attack. The thing is that after not getting any type of peace offer, Napoleon would not really think that this could be true, and thus he would know that the Russians would be plotting against him in some way or another. Remember, he is not a dumb person and he was a military genius after all. Napoleon would then try to strengthen his position all over Europe, helping his brother in Spain, while Tsar Alexander would try to retake the lands that Napoleon gave to his allies. If there's one thing we know in history, it is that Russia can only win wars if they are not involved in a two-front war, if their enemies are involved in two front wars themselves, and in the case of Poland, if Poland is somehow disunited. The Duchy of Warsaw was pretty much united, although very small, and with Austrian and French support, the Russians would make initial advances, but after clearing Spain, Napoleon may then come to their aid and destroy several Russian armies one after one. Napoleon would probably include treaties with other countries around Russia, and as a result, Russia would have to accept the new Napoleonic order. The Duchy of Warsaw would face, of course, some internal unrest, but they could clear this up as well. Latin America would get independent and never face any type of Spanish invasion again. This means the first Mexican Empire could be much stronger than in OTL. The US may get Florida earlier, Brazil would continue being and become a heavy ally of the Brits as well. The Brits would probably still have a naval dominance and fight against the French for some time, until the French would have enough resources and manpower to beat the British Navy. Not only will Napoleon's continental system prevail, but he could gain more power in India and in Persia, and he could expand. With the support of the French and Russia's weakness, Napoleon would keep the Ottomans alive, because without the Ottomans, well, Russia could expand into the Balkans, and this would be a big issue for him. Via several treaties and land acquisition, the French would guarantee the Ottomans their independence against the Russian aggression, because it's better to have one big enemy whom you know than, well, having the unknown and an even much bigger enemy. Without the British Navy and no fear from an invasion, Napoleon will conquer Portugal, and the French would get Haiti back as well. Napoleon would survive for some more years, but according to the most recent studies, he died of peptic ulcers and gastric cancer. Around 1830 he would die, and Napoleon II would only be around 19, giving his mother a lot of influence. She seemed to play her cards right, even with the fall of Napoleon, and managed to become the Duchess of Parma. Keep in mind that this was after the defeat of Napoleon. I believe that Napoleon II could become a good monarch, but not as good as his father was. He would always be in the shadows of his father. The first years would be troublesome for the continental system, and Spain could rebel once more. And the Dutch may do the same thing, because it's something they like to do. The Napoleonic key allies would be the Italians, Bavaria, Poland, and Austria to some extent. Russia could also try to invade at a specific time, but I don't think that this would be enough to destroy this new continental system. After consolidating the continental system once more, Napoleon and France, they would expand their power towards Africa this time. The French would not have a strong influence in the Americas, leaving it to the US or the most likely First Mexican Empire. With the Napoleonic Code, the Spring of Nations would still happen and give not only problems to the French, but most likely to Austria as well as Britain. France would have to fight rebels around Germany in particular, also in the Netherlands again, while in Spain, well, the Spaniards, they could perhaps start to accept the Napoleonic order, because Napoleon and his successors, they would then try to twist their rule as a guarantee to keep Spain united. The Basque and the Catalans, they would then openly rebel, of course. The Poles, they could get a boost and strengthen their claims against the Russians, but we wouldn't see any type of Polish insurgents or unrest, because, well, they would be independent anyways. The Balkans, as always, would get very messy, and Austria this time could collapse without any Russian intervention, which means that Hungary could end up controlling most of the Balkans, and a Napoleonic Greece could exist as well. The French would give the Netherlands some independence, Bavaria may end up controlling most of southern Germany, while Westphalia and Prussia would get the rest of Germany. The Napoleonic elite would then twist their rule as support of popular sovereignty and as well nationalism. The Irish would rebel against the Brits, and if the French are able to help the Irish achieve independence, well, we would enter an age of French domination. The French will not only have a lot of domination in politics, but also their language will stay the language of diplomacy and even spread much more than it did in our timeline. This means that French will effectively become the world language instead of English. It will only be a matter of time until the continental system will start to collapse, but even with its collapse, France would have many colonies, especially in Africa. They would be the ones to control India, Indonesia, and even perhaps Indochina. Will Russia even be able to recover, or will some countries turn against the French? And that's where we leave it for now. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.